welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast, available on all platforms including YouTube if you prefer to watch. My name is Jeremy Blain, CEO of Performance Works International, Executive Director of the Transformational Leadership Acceleration Institute, and Managing Partner of Diversity Talent. My aim is to bring insights from leaders, experts, and highly talented professionals from around the world. Insights, stories, and advice from the front lines of modern leadership to engage, inspire, and mobilize progress back in the workplace. Every episode is a learning opportunity for us all. The Rethink Leadership podcast also supports charities around the world. Each episode is in aid of a cause chosen by my guests, and to date, I'm proud to say we've supported over 60 global and local great causes. Today's guest is Emma Donovan, a seasoned entrepreneur with over 15 years of experience in brand strategy and professional profiling. As co-founder of Dapper, she excels in creating innovative products and collaborating with brilliant minds. Emma's superpower lies in injecting enthusiasm and vibrancy into any situation, and currently her focus is on sustainable ways to approach personal brand development for entrepreneurs and leadership teams in a way that's authentic and creates space to build their brands with intention. We discuss why leaders should care about their personal branding, the benefits of getting that focus right, and the small steps you can take to have an immediate big impact, all with a thread of the deeper, authentic you coming out to shine. This podcast is in aid of Blue Sky Foundation, an organisation which believes every child in South Africa has a right to a decent education and an opportunity to acquire the skills needed to support a family. Their mission is to unlock the financial and other resources which will allow community organisations to address inequality. We've made a donation as a thank you to Emma for joining us and in getting behind this extraordinary cause. Emma, thanks very much for joining me. Please tell us about yourself, your business, Dapper, and something about yourself that not many people might know.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's great to be here. I'm Emma, based in Cape Town, South Africa, and a co-founder of Dapper. And Dapper is a brand studio. It's designed and born out of a desire to give leaders more confidence around their own stories and how they tell them in a way that's more authentic. And to do that, we believe you need space. So we help them create space to show up as the most authentic and best versions of themselves. So that's a kind of short intro to it. And something people don't know is a tricky one. I guess a lot of people listening to this don't know me at all, but something quite fun that I reflected on is I actually created a backpackers during the 2010 FIFA World Cup that was hosted in South Africa. I am not really a football fan, but I was like, this is such a great opportunity. And reflecting on it, the things that stood out for me were creating a brand from scratch and just meeting people from all over the world. And I've somehow managed to weave those in more than a decade later into the world of Dapper. So some nice synergy there between two very different worlds.
Wow, it sounds like a big light bulb moment there. And has that passion kept going? Were you glued to the television over the Women's World Cup?
I got to admit I wasn't. But what I love is is just the camaraderie and passion and that comes through from sportsmen and women and how that translates into life. So it's something that I'm very interested and passionate about and how to bring people together.
Well, that comes across loud and clear. And I love the way that you describe your brand studio, enabling leaders to tell their own story, or anybody to tell their own story in their own authentic way. And I'm quite interested to go deeper into that now and understand why, from your perspective, particularly when we consider executive leaders, why should they care about personal branding?
It's a great question. And I think the first thing that comes up for me is your brand is the one thing you're going to have for your whole life. You may change careers, you may go through different iterations of your brand, but it is something you have your whole life. And an interesting distinction for me is between reputation and brand. So everyone has a reputation. It's how other people see you. Whereas your personal brand is a lot more intentional. It's how you want people to see you. how you own your story, what you choose to share, and how visible you are. I think that's a big one. A little exercise we often do in a workshop or a keynote is say, everyone take out your phone. And they're like, what? Isn't that the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing? And I say, just type your name into Google. And it's so fascinating seeing people's reactions, because it's not something many of us do often, but you're actually getting a sense of what other people will find as a first impression. And it's a great way to land that message of you can curate the story, you can own it. Not obviously every result, but you can influence what people see about you. And that's in an online space, but we're also very passionate about brand being holistic. So it's how you show up in a boardroom, for a keynote, with your family, with your whole kind of community. So that, I hope that answers the question as why people should care. I think it's just, it is part of who you are.
It is, and I have to thank you for finally clearing up the difference between reputation and brand in such a simple, powerful way. I appreciate that. And I get it as an executive leader. I mean, I'm not as expert at this as yourself for sure, but I understand the importance of this. So maybe for those that are tuning in, for those leaders that feel, you know what, I really do need to do something about this. What are the benefits for those executive leaders or senior managers who are getting it right?
So I think a big one is feeling comfortable in your own skin. Once you're clear on your purpose and your brand, it's just so much easier to show up in an authentic way. And I think another real benefit is credibility. So that credibility of having a strong brand and what you stand for as a leader, I think is a big one. And a third benefit I would say is the ripple effect. A strong brand can have a positive impact on your community and how you're sharing your brand with more intention.
Got it. So the consistency of being able to show up as that person, as that authentic person, credibility that comes with it. And I really understand that ripple effect as well. And how then it starts to help build the brand. So if we talk about sort of that personal brand in itself, again, for those tuning in, what are the ingredients for high impact and high influence personal branding?
I wish I could give you a magic formula, but I don't think there is one. But I think it's something I've mentioned already. It's just kind of starting with purpose. So it's what we call the essence of your brand, and really looking at your own brand as a leader and distinguishing it from your company brand. I think that's a good place to start. Is just what brings you joy, what's important to you, what are you working towards. So really understanding yourself at a deeper level. And only once that's done do we recommend building your brand. Your brand exists, so whether you say elevating it or curating it, it's really looking at how do you show up. And again, both online and offline. And that's where the Googling yourself comes in. I think people often think of LinkedIn as a CV if they're not using it as a business networking tool. So we really encourage people to say, look beyond your experience and your role, but what is your headline? What's the first thing people read? Does your about section tell a story? Is it giving people a sense of who you are? And then I would say the final step is to just remember that your brand is not a tick box. It's not, okay, I've updated my profile, now I'm done. It's something that evolves with you. And you want to just keep it aligned to where you're going. So if you have that sort of true north and that purpose, you can say, is my brand evolving in a way that makes sense now, but also for the future and what I want in the next chapter?
Got it. Yeah. And I particularly buy into understanding yourself first. Where's your joy? What does the deeper you stand for? Then let that flourish and build on that. And also what I like is that headline it's almost imagining, isn't it? What would a newspaper headline say about you, that authentic you? And then
Yeah.
how does that evolve over time as a headline?
Mm.
That's some very powerful steps that people can take. And you mentioned LinkedIn there, because
Yeah.
one thing is sort of getting all of that done, but one of the big jobs internally, externally, offline, online, is getting yourself out there in personal branding terms. So
Yeah.
how should people go about that, and where should they do it, particularly now that we're in the digital networking age as much as the face-to-face age?
Yeah. I'd say the first thing is to say, who are you wanting to connect with and why? So again, starting with the why, because I could say, yeah, LinkedIn's the best, professional networking platform, but it depends what industry you're in and what you're working towards. I do think LinkedIn's a great place to start. But if you have a really visual brand, if you're a photographer, for example, then you absolutely want to be on Instagram as well. And I think you also want to think, where am I going to add value? So not just what can I get out of it, but what can I contribute to a community, and how can I do that in a way that's authentic to my own brand? And I think looking at, again, the conversational side of it. So exactly what we're doing now, we're having a conversation through a podcast. I think that's a really powerful platform to get your brand out there and just engage with different people. Keynotes, writing books. I think just thinking beyond putting content out and making it interactive. And then, of course, the kind of AI piece of the puzzle is a really interesting one that I get asked about a lot is, should you use AI to create content? And my view is absolutely use it to streamline the process, but don't ever lose that original thought. So make sure that if you are generating content or using a tool you can even have tools now that comment on posts on your behalf, but just, is this my brand voice? Is it authentic? Have I actually thought through the content? So I think there's an exciting opportunity to create more content if that's what you want to do. But again, just make sure that it feels real.
Yeah, that's well said. Don't lose the original thought, because it's all too easy. So I
Yeah.
paid for the Chat GPT 4, the open, the more powerful version, and my goodness me, you could very easily lose that
Yeah.
original thought if you're not careful.
Mm.
So I had to be quite disciplined on how I use that, but it is
Yeah.
frightening even at this stage where that you can extrapolate that out and think, wow, it's
Yeah.
what's where that's going to go to. So where do we need to be, the value add that is for that community and for me to come out as well? And I'm very pleased to hear you say that podcast keynotes and books work. That's great. Tick tick tick. Fantastic. Excellent. So I'm on my way here. But I'm certainly not expert at this, but I'm sure that you have worked with leaders and experts who have really run with this and seen some great results. And I'd love some examples, if you have them, of those getting that in place with that before and after measure that prove the benefits of focus on a high impact personal brand like this.
Absolutely. We could be here all day. I've got so many stories I can share, but I'll pick a couple that maybe show the kind of variety again of industries and career stages. One of my favorites is an author and entrepreneur called PJ Brady. He is American but lives in Europe, and we met when he was busy wrapping up a draft of his first book called Raising Kids to Be Brave, Smart and Kind, which is brilliant for leaders as well as parents. I don't have kids yet and just found it. Yeah, it was just one of my favorite books. Is one of my favorite books. And I think what was really interesting there is when I first spoke to him, I was like, why are you talking to me? You've got such a strong brand. You're launching a book. And he was struggling with imposter syndrome, which I've realized almost all brilliant entrepreneurs and leaders do at some point or in some way. And what we did is worked through that to give him the confidence to see the growth opportunity, or to realize it. I think he obviously knew it was there. And to really go, how do you want to be, again, how do you want to be seen? For him, the kind of fun, humility. I'm not an expert. I'm just a parent, and I've done some leadership stuff. That kind of really like relatable brand was important to him. So we worked for a couple of months leading up to the launch and then post-launch, and gave him a lot of strategic input in terms of brand positioning for his podcast he's launching, and just how he kind of puts his brand across multiple platforms in a way that's kind of authentic to him. So yeah, that's been a great one. And then an example closer to home is the founder of Outsource CFO, which is one of our fastest scaling cloud accounting firms here in Cape Town, now global, but Cape Town's home. And the founder, Lo Barnard, is incredibly passionate about leadership and his leadership style, as well as scaling the business, which really resonates with me. So he puts a lot of thought into how he shows up, creating content that's adding value to other leaders, not just people within the sort of finance world. And we had a fun example this week where we were editing a video of a keynote he had done, and it was almost a blooper reel in itself at the beginning, because his slide started on the wrong slide, and he's in front of in person, 200 people in the room, and he had a moment, you can see it, moment of panic. And then he just owned it, and he laughed and said, well, let's start that again. And he shared a LinkedIn post around, you don't have to be perfect. And he's one of those people who people look up to and go, oh, he's just perfect all the time. And he was just owning that. I'm not perfect, I'm human. And making that part of his brand to be a more relatable leader. So very different examples that kind of just, show how you can work on your brand in different ways.
Oh, absolutely. And it does show that human behind the badge or the level, doesn't it? And I'm just going to put you on the spot now. Just give us a couple of examples of what you do for yourself.
Oh, it's that classic case of, the cobbler's kids don't have shoes, but I am trying to be a lot better. So when I first started using LinkedIn, I found it a bit of a chore, to be honest. Whereas now it's just part of my day. I love joining conversations. I try and put very vulnerable, authentic posts out. So they're not often about Dapper. They're more just reflections on how I'm building my brand, building my confidence, my story. I'm really enjoying doing more podcasts. So I love thinking on my feet. I love meeting people. I love, sharing any kind of value that I can bring. And keynotes would, I guess, be the other one. I was asked to do a keynote maybe 18 months ago, and until that point was more comfortable sort of behind the camera than in the limelight. And I thought, I spend my life getting people out of their comfort zones and telling them to, be brave. So let me take a dose of that advice for myself. And I've done a couple of keynotes since that I've really enjoyed, and I've really enjoyed the challenge. So I don't have a book yet. Maybe that's next year's project.
That's great. At least you're trying to get onto your own blueprint around this, Emma. So I do know what you mean about that. You're the expert, but oh gosh, when it comes to doing myself, it's like, gosh, I'm exhausted now. It's like, let me go and have a cobbler instead. So
Exactly.
so maybe but maybe though that many tuning in saying, oh yeah, absolutely, I know I need to get hold of this. It seems daunting. So how do I get started? For those people then who want to accelerate progress in personal branding terms, what would your top 5 pieces of advice be to adopt into action now? And I think from what I've seen also is I talked about your blueprint, and I found that very useful myself. I think it's called Brand Yourself, right? And I think this forms a really great part of the pieces of advice that would be beneficial to those tuning in.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think the concept behind Brand Yourself is to have a more accessible version of what we do. So it is a online course as opposed to what we have done previously and will continue to do, which is a much sort of deeper one-on-one process. But they both start in the same place. And that, I guess, is my first tip, is to start with why. is to take yourself off for a walk or a coffee at your favorite coffee spot, turn your phone off and actually just jot down what brings you joy, like what's your purpose. I mean, that's obviously a huge thing to just jot down, but just to try and not overthink it, to just really tap into getting clarity of purpose, because I feel that that's necessary to start. And then the authenticity piece, I guess, comes with confidence. It's just confidence to own that story in an authentic way. So to just either have someone who holds you accountable to that, someone who knows you that you can trust. I think that's also amazing. My business partner, Lindsay, is great at that. She'll call me out if something doesn't feel authentic, or she will encourage me to keep going and building that momentum. I would say carving out time is really important, and it doesn't have to be a 2-hour focus slot. I often say take 10 minutes to jot down, for example, a draft post that you want to share, and then maybe a few minutes to refine it. But you can, and I've often done it, you type a sentence, delete it, type it again, no, that's not quite right. And you just get into that cycle of overthinking it to the point of not being productive. So to just, have some fun. Like it shouldn't be, like I said, it shouldn't be that chore that I used to see it as. We chatted briefly about LinkedIn. I think just getting your profile optimized, again, that's something that is a checklist. It's one I'm very happy to share with anyone listening. We've got a great checklist for LinkedIn that just gives you a kind of list of how you can get it up to date, with some tips to do that well. And so what else? I think a last point is that it's very easy to get caught up in creating lots of content, especially with the AI tools, as we mentioned, but to really focus on quality. Is what you're sharing going to add value to your audience? Is it something you're passionate about? Is it something you're knowledgeable about? Is there a sort of reason to share it? So to just put some intention behind the content you create. And as I said, try and have fun doing it.
Yeah, intention and fun. Great pieces of advice, I would say there. And I also like the piece of advice around buddying up and having some peer coaching around this. It really helps to build the momentum, because you do need the time, but you also need a bit of that feedback. You mentioned that checklist for those listening on Spotify or Apple. Is there a link that they can go to on this, Emma?
Absolutely. I can share a link to download that from our website.
Okay, great, excellent. So I'd like to say thank you very much for your time, Emma. Some fantastic tips around the why, what, and how here. So how do people find out more about you and Dapper and continue the conversation?
Oh, that would be great. I'm always up for a conversation. It is becomedapper.com. And on LinkedIn, you're very welcome to connect with me. It's Emma Donovan-Dapper.
Thank you so much for joining me, Emma. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Jeremy. I've really enjoyed the chat.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. Please like, comment, and support us on your favourite platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.